Okay, I'd like to call this meeting of the Town Council for July 15th to order. If you would please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much and welcome. Announcements. I knew there was something I needed to do next. Announcements for July 15th. The Merrimack Town Council would like to express our deepest sympathy to the family and friends of Norman V. Carr, who passed away on July 12th at the age of 76. Norm served as the Emergency Medical Services Director for Merrimack Ambulance, as well as a selectman on the Board of Selectmen from 1997 to 2004. He retired as a physician assistant from Dartmouth Hitchcock Family Practice in Merrimack after practicing for over 35 years. Norm's dedication and contributions have had a positive effect on our community and are sincerely appreciated. He was also a member of the executive board of the O'Leary Center for quite some time, as well as president, I think, of that organization. So Norm's had a big impact on our community, and we're sorry that he passed. I'd like to ask you to join me in a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Upcoming town council, wow, I've got a long list. Upcoming town council meetings. Thursday, August 19th, as you recall, our summer meetings, we have one official public meeting in the months of July and August. So August 19th is our meeting for that month. And then September 9th and September 23rd, as well as October 14th and October 28th, are upcoming town council meetings here in this room at 7 o'clock. Paul, do you have anything?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes. I want to inform the town that town-wide long line striping of our main roads will begin tonight, Thursday, July 15th, and expected to take 2 nights to complete, weather permitting. The next household hazardous waste disposal event will take place Saturday, August 7th from 8 a.m. to noon in the City of Nashua Park and Ride location at 25 Crown Street. For more information on this event, please contact the transfer station at 424-2604 or visit the webpage of the Merrimack Solid Waste Division or the National Regional Planning Commission for details. Save the date. National Night Out will be Tuesday, August 3rd from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. at Abbey Griffin Park. National Night Out is an annual community building campaign that promotes police and community partnerships and neighborhood camaraderie to make our neighborhoods safer, more caring places to live. National Night Out enhances the relationship between neighbors and law enforcement while bringing back the true sense of community. Furthermore, it provides a great opportunity to bring police and neighbors together upon positive circumstances. Visit the Parks and Rec Department's website for more details at www.merrimackparkswithanS.org. And once again, that's August 3rd from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. In addition, come join the Merrimack Parks and Recreation Division on select Friday nights this summer with our free movie nights in the park. What better way to enjoy a beautiful night out and relax at Wasserman Park and enjoy a night out with friends and family. All movies will be held at Wasserman Park on the baseball field next to the tennis courts. The park is located at 116 Natticook Road in Merrimack. Movies are Ferris Bueller's Day Off, August 27th. That was postponed from July 9th. Hopefully we'll stop getting rain on every Friday night that Matt, or Wednesday night that Matt has an event, because it seems like every time he has an event it rains. Friday, July 23rd, Finding Dory. Friday, August 13th, Beauty and the Beast. And September 17th, Friday, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, we have a section for comments from the press and public. If anybody wants to comment to the town council on items, come up now. Seeing nobody headed for the mics. Recognitions, resignations, and retirements. We have one recognition of a town committee member submitted by Town Council Chairman Tom Koenig and Vice Chair Finley Rothaus. The Town Council to present a certificate to the following individual for their volunteer service to the town of Merrimack. Drew Duffy on the Zoning Board of Adjustment has chosen not to renew her membership in that committee. So we have a plaque for her. Drew's not here tonight, right? Just checking. It'd be presented to Drew Duffy in recognition of her service as a member of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. It says, in recognition of your dedication and commitment to the public service during your appointment as a member of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. Your service and devotion to the Zoning Board of Adjustment has had a valuable effect upon this community. We wish to extend to you our sincere appreciation for your outstanding performance of duty from August of 2018 to June of 2021. Signed by the Merrimack Town Council, and we will make sure she gets that. Okay. Appointments. 2021 Townwide Reevaluation Update, submitted by Avatar Associates President, Town Assessor Lauren Martin. Town Council to receive an update related to the 2021 Townwide Reevaluation as required by law under RSA 21-J:11. Welcome, Lauren.
So
Good to see you again.
I
Nice to see you too.
thought it'd be good for Lauren to get back in front of the council to discuss the townwide valuation that is going on. Lauren and I did a video, a TV show.
Very well done.
Thank you. And we did that a while ago before she started the process. Once the letters have gone out about everybody's values, we're running it again. We are doing a blitz on all the social media accounts. It was on Public Works Facebook page tonight with the link to the video. So anybody who wants to see the process and things of that sort. But I thought it would be good for Lauren to come in tonight and give the council an update because we're about halfway done.
We're close to done with the hearing process. So
Can you
we're-
make sure your mic is on?
It's on. I'll
Okay,
sit
thank you.
closer if I have to do that. I tried to push it away. I don't like being up here on the spotlight. Yeah, it's been going well. We sent out notices last week of June, the 23rd or 24th, I think it was. We sent the notices out. We've had a lot of response. We have about 170 taxpayers have filed, scheduled an appointment to meet and talk with us. We're holding those hearings on the phone, but we have made staff available to go out and do interior inspections for taxpayers that had issues or concerns about physical data. So both the assistant assessor and we've had staff come down from Avatar to help with that process. And surprisingly, a lot of people have actually taken us up on going out and correcting the data, which has been good. The video, I was a little reluctant to do the video. Paul likes the camera time, I'm not so much. But I've heard really positive feedback from the taxpayers about that they've watched the video, that they started to have a heart attack about their tax bill. They watched the video and had a better understanding that our tax rate would drop proportionally. So I think it did help. Most of the calls we've been receiving have been the same kind of concerns, though. So not everybody has seen it, but a relatively small percentage of our taxpayers in town, with just shy of 11,000 parcels and about 170 calls total is not too bad. We've done everything we can to help taxpayers. If they wanted comparable sales sent to them, we're emailing them, we're receiving emails from them with appraisals, with pictures, and we're going out doing those interior inspections. So we'll continue to collect that data. We have tomorrow right now scheduled for hearings. We're back next week for one day, and then I'm back the last week largely to handle commercial appointments. We had sent out the residential first, and then knowing that obviously that would be our biggest pool of people to call. So we sent those out first, and we're dealing with most of the residential homeowners now, and then that last week we'll focus on the commercial property owners. There's still time to get on, schedule an appointment if people want to meet with us. We take appointments, they can sign up online right up to the day before. So there's appointments available right now if they still want to meet with us.
And how do they sign up?
In the letter we sent them, there's a link in there that they can go right online to the appointment scheduler. And then anybody who didn't have a computer, didn't feel comfortable scheduling that, were urged to call the assessing department And Tracy and Maureen in the office have been helping them schedule those appointments for those who either didn't have the resources or the wherewithal to deal with the technology
I
at all.
found it confusing, yep.
Yeah, but I think overall that's gone pretty smoothly with that. So that's really our whole update in a nutshell. But
So Lauren, what's the biggest question you're getting?
how could you double my taxes? That is the biggest question. And a lot of commentary that we haven't provided them with an estimate of the tax rate, which is difficult because, as you all know, we have the budgetary component, but we don't have the values finalized yet to have that component to put in there to determine what that tax rate will end up at. I wish we had an estimate because that would really alleviate the bulk of the questions that we get. So that's the number one question. The second one is that they've looked online and we don't have their data accurate. They don't have 4 bedrooms, they have 3. Their basement isn't finished. That's probably number 2, and we're dealing with those now that we have staff out, vaccinated staff out doing inspections. The third thing that we've probably heard the most about is amenities in cluster subdivisions.
That was my question.
That's everybody's question. Last time we came through I think it was during the 2016 update, and it could have even been 2011. They're all starting to roll together in my head. We had come through and we're analyzing sales in a lot of those cluster subdivisions. And what we find is that those fractional acreage lots, even though they may only be 0.2 or 0.3, we're selling similarly to parcels in a conventional subdivision lot that had met zone minimum. So what we do, they don't own that area in fee simple interest, so we can only value their land for what they own, but we find through sales analysis that they are selling similarly to those that have an acre in a conventional subdivision. So we add amenities to account for that difference. It doesn't mean they have a clubhouse, it doesn't mean they have tennis courts or a pool. Some developments might, but not all. And that's what we're capturing there. So when we came through the first time, we uncovered a lot of those and we addressed them and we dealt with those 5 or 10 years ago. And as we get more sales transactions in those cluster subdivisions, we've been able to identify that in some additional ones that we didn't have it on before. So we tried to make all of the neighborhood codes consistent so that a Mallard Point may be similar to Weston Estates. And so the neighborhood code would be similar, and somebody living in Mallard Point could look at somebody in Fox Meadow and compare their base land. And then the only difference would be that locational factor for the amenity that would be different. But the homes could be valued similarly, the land could be similar, and that amenity would be the only thing that was different. So we have had a lot of questions about that. Before we finalize everything, we will make sure that everything has been reviewed and in line with the recent sales. I've tried very diligently to not look at sales after April 1st for market determination, because we're trying to arrive at market value as of April 1st. And, you know, we went into crazy COVID times, and, you know, we were already in a strong appreciating market since the last update in 2016. But COVID has sent us into a whole new level of sales. We have very little supply, low interest rates, which just increases what's going on in the real estate market.
Yeah.
Overbidding, asking price, 5 days on the market, 50, 100 grand more than an asking price. Less than 5 days on the market average right now. When we reviewed town back in April, there were 121 properties listed for sale on the market. All but 10 were active under contract. And of those 10, 8 were commercial leases. So 2 residential properties at that time that were on the market and had not gone under contract, and they had only been on for a couple days. So we've never really experienced to this degree that kind of upticking to asking prices. So we're looking to value everything as of April 1st. We've looked at sales 6 months prior, trended them right to April 1st, and we've not looked at those after April 1st. The market's going to continue to go up. Eventually it will come down. What goes up always comes down. That's another question that has been asked is, what are we gonna do if the market crashes in 2 years? Well, it may not crash, but it's coming down. It always does. Interest rates will start to go up and values will come down. More people will put their homes on the market, which will shift supply and demand, and values will come down. What are we gonna do about that? Probably nothing. And I say probably nothing because if everybody in town is valued higher than market value, it's still a fair and equitable situation. So if we were to bring those values down, it would just mean the tax rate would have to go up. So as long as everybody is similarly, being treated similarly, then it's still fair. Because all we would be doing is bring them down and have that rate increase. So it's not really effective to do that, although sometimes it makes taxpayers feel better to see their assessment below what they could sell it for. Because we hear that a lot too. The assessment is never at what you could sell it for. Well, one day, every 5 years at least it is, but that's it. And this year, it's, it's that April 1st date, and on April 2nd it was worth more. So that has helped, I think, through some of these questions to know that it's still continued to go up. So it's hard to argue it wasn't worth that on April 1st sometimes. Because on April 2nd it was worth more, sadly. But yeah, it's a crazy market.
Very crazy. Finley?
Thanks, Lauren. I have just a couple things, but on the first one, where the amenities are now called out, as you put it on the cards, were those legitimately undervalued in the past then?
That's been a question, and I don't know that I can say they were undervalued or we were attributing more value to their land. And so sometimes some of those neighborhoods were listed higher to bring their land value up, and now we've lowered those down to be more consistent with similar neighborhoods, which means that we have to capture a portion of it as an amenity. Okay. So I'm not sure that they were undervalued. In some cases, maybe.
But we accommodated in a different fashion.
Exactly,
Like.
exactly, and a little bit more consistent, because we were already using those amenities in every condominium development in town, in the mobile home parks, and in a good portion of the cluster subdivisions. So it's just making a little bit more consistent across the board, so that everyone is being treated similarly.
No, good. My next question is, where we can't do the tax rate, something I'm curious, did the values for commercial, industrial, and residential go up similarly, or were there separations, commercial, industrial less than residential? Because that will have an impact on your tax bill.
Absolutely. I mean, our initial analysis, I don't recall there being a big shift in that. And when I looked at what we're looking at right now preliminarily as a percentage increase, I didn't break it down, so I can't answer that at this moment with precise accuracy, but I can get you that information.
I'd be curious.
Based on that. But as of right now, we were just looking at the total change, which was about, say it whispered, about 35%.
Yeah.
We haven't finalized everything yet. We still have utility values we have to finalize. But we're in that ballpark.
Because it would be good to know, because then I would have a comfort zone in telling people that if you had a $100,000 house, $25 $1,000, and your house doubles in value, the tax rate gets cut in half. And if I know that everybody's similar in their increase in value, it makes it easier.
I think if anyone is looking at their total percent increase, and if you're looking at, statistically looking at updates, and I don't know why this happens, but when you update values, about a third go up, a third stay the same, and a third go down. And I don't know why it works that way, but it does tend to work that way. Yeah. And so if you're looking at an overall townwide increase of about 35%, if your increase is greater than that, you'll probably see your taxes go up. They're not going to double, but your taxes would go up. If you're about that 35, your tax bill will likely stay about the same. If you saw a smaller increase, 25%, then you're likely going to see your taxes go down. That's a reasonable.
Good way.
Yeah. It doesn't answer your question about, is it, commercial versus residential? Is there a shift in that? I didn't really see that, but it really depends on specifically, what type of commercial property, because just like the residential, some went up more than others. But I can get that breakdown for you. I know you're not meeting for a little bit, but I can get that information for you.
Mid-August, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
So just to clarify what you said a minute, it's you typically a third goes down, a third goes up, and the rest stays in the middle. But in this case, because the whole value went up by about 30%, nobody's going down. They may not have gone up very much, but.
Oh, well, that's what I'm saying. If somebody's, so if
It's
you're
relative
in
to the
that,
median that changed, right? It's not relative to where they were.
if your total value went up 20%, the tax rate's gonna come down. I mean, I don't know what got voted in at budget time, if there was anything large. But everything being equal, if there were no changes in spending, value went up 35%, tax rate will drop that same percentage. So if you only went up 20%, your taxes will come down. That,
Right.
because you didn't see the same
Yeah.
kind of increase, absolutely.
And what we've been saying all along, and you've been saying, and Paul's been saying, you probably said it on your video, is that the town has voted a certain budget. We're not spending more than that budget because your property value went up.
I've been asked what the town's doing with all that money.
With all that extra money, I've seen several emails to that effect. Is, you know, where's all this extra money going? It's like,
As I've explained there too, the town can only collect the money necessary and approved by the voters. That's it. The town doesn't set their own tax rate and decide to stuff away some of that extra money. It doesn't happen. It goes to the state with the budget, and it goes there with the total value, and they determine the tax rate so that you collect enough to pay your bills. No more, no less, that's it. So we've had that conversation and tried to, it's always an education process.
Yeah.
I think, people get to talking sometimes and they heard someone else say that and now it's gospel. So it's constantly educating them. That's not the case. The town cannot collect more money. And if you want to affect spending, you have to go vote. That's it, bottom line.
Right.
So it's been, I think people, are starting to understand it's becoming more and more frequent. We update that once every 5 years. A lot of people in town are the same people. They've had the same conversation. They understand the economics behind all of that. So we've heard a lot of people comment that, no, I understand the tax rate's going to come down. So that's a good place to be, that they finally get that. Absolutely, because that is important. And that's, in that letter, when I say don't multiply this new value times the tax rate, you'll have heart failure. I don't want you to do that. But because I don't have a number to give them, it's hard. It's hard. I wish we could
Right,
give
and
something.
we don't
I
have
just
it
don't
either,
have it
so,
yet.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're only a portion of that tax rate here in the town. So, I mean, there's also the
Absolutely.
school and the county and all those things, which are
Yep.
part of it as well. Does anybody else have any questions? Nancy?
Back to the amenities, just a little bit more explanation. So this was the first time it was redistributed, if that's the correct way to put it, for the amenities.
For some of the cluster subdivisions.
Okay,
Last
prior-
time through, we
Okay.
definitely had that amenity on a good portion of the cluster subdivisions, just not all of them. We were capturing it just in their land in some of them last time.
Did it have to do with the age of the clusters? Were the
Um,
newer ones catching it earlier or older one?
I don't think the age had anything to do with it.
Okay.
The newer ones are easier because we generally have a tremendous amount of sales activity.
Okay.
So that definitely helps hone in on a more definitive number than a development that might only have, 1 or 2 sales transactions.
Now, is the methodology you're talking about, is this a state regulation thing, or is it just a standard that assessors use to equalize? Do you understand what I'm trying to get at?
Kind of. There's no state methodology, and which is tough, because the taxpayers always want to see the book, that it has to be this way.
Right.
I may value a property with one methodology, and another assessor may value it under a different methodology. If at the end of the day, we both arrive at market value, how we got there is not as relevant.
Okay.
So there's no, as you know, I sit on the assessing standards board for the state, so I'm always looking to develop standards that are similar across the state, but we all still bring something slightly different to it. We use different CAMA systems, and how those get implemented is slightly different. So there's no state method to do it one way or the other if we, at the end of the day, regardless of how we got there, we're at market value. We, as a company, have just always worked diligently to try to separate out, probably more than we should, because I get more questions as a result. But the more you can break it apart and let taxpayers look at it and be able to compare their neighborhood to another neighborhood, or their home to another home in a neighborhood where it was the same builder, or it just helps for their purposes to compare things. So that's why we try to do that. You know, back in the day, you got a tax bill that said land and building. No one really knew how you got there. So as we try to get more and more transparent with that to help taxpayers, sometimes it adds a little more confusion, I think. And that's where we are with some of those new amenities this
So
time.
do I understand it correctly if I said, for example, you have two houses, one has more land than the other. They're both appraised at the same price, they would sell for the same amount, but one has more land than the other. At one point, the land would be valued as the same, but that's not accurate, because one has more land than the other.
Correct.
So you had, a method had to be developed to equalize it. Is that
And
it?
it is.
Because
And-
it's sold at the same, they're valued
Exactly.
the
You
same.
have one in a cluster
But the land
subdivision.
was different, so in order to explain the difference, because land cannot be the same, because that's more accurate.
Correct.
You have this amenities.
Yep. The other thing that people don't understand is they take that amenity, they multiply it by how many units in that development, and say, you're valuing that 20-acre piece at 10.5 million. No. If it were a 20-acre piece owned in fee simple by one person, it would have a very different value than when you take a portion and we're extracting it from sales. So its value to each individual person is different than if it were under one. And condominiums are the best example because taxpayers don't own any land in those situations, or they own a fractional interest into that land, but they don't own a defined 1 acre. So in those situations, we still have to put a value on it, but they don't own any land. So if you looked at their property record card, for example, you wouldn't see an assessment for land, but you would see an
Okay.
amenity for their development. And then if they wanted to compare their buildings from building, because some CAMA systems do load all of that value into a building value, and they don't attribute anything to the site. And there is added value there. So we try to separate that out, and then people can do comparisons from one similar development to another to make sure that it is being treated similarly.
Good,
So.
thank you. I'm sure it still doesn't make people happy, but I understand.
It does, no, obviously,
I think
it's
the bottom
a tough
line
thing.
is it worth selling for that price?
And you know,
That's
that's
the bottom
funny,
line.
because we've had all the same discussions and we've had all the methodology talk. And that's always my last question is, at the end of the day, when you look at that total value, could you sell your property today for that? I'm like, well, yeah, I could get that. I could get more than that. And I'm like,
Then what's the argument? Yeah.
but I
But
understand
I don't
it,
want
you
to
know.
be taxed on it.
Well, and whether you're taxed, as long as you're convinced that your neighbors are being taxed the same, you should
Right.
be okay. But if you're thinking that you're being charged more,
Right.
if you're on a corner of a
Unfair,
busy
yeah.
street versus the guy further in on the on the
Absolutely.
subdivision, you
And
might
that's-
feel like your property is worth less because
Yeah.
of the extra traffic and stuff like that.
Absolutely, and I think, you know, as we get farther and farther along with the transparent
think the
information and
tax
putting
rate's
more
going up.
information out there, it continually makes the process better. Taxpayers can look at their neighbors, they can look at your properties, they can look at anybody's property and,
That's right.
and do that comparison to, at the end of the day, you still might not like it. But if you look around at what's selling or other people's property you've always been at a similar, like, level with, it gives some sense that you're being treated fairly.
Mhm.
You still might not like it, but that's all we can ask for at the end of the day, is that everyone's being treated fairly and equitably.
And also the bottom line, that their tax bill is not going up 30%.
Correct.
Those are the two important things.
Absolutely.
It's a very important piece.
Yeah, that's everyone's important piece, you know, and you need to know what it's gonna be, and right now, it's fear of the unknown because they don't know what that rate's
And
gonna be.
that's the biggest misunderstanding, right
Yep,
there.
absolutely.
But generally speaking, it's not gonna change. The cost for your tax bill is gonna pay the bills that we already all voted on, and so,
There shouldn't be big,
gonna-
there
shouldn't be
shouldn't
any
be big
huge
shifts in
jumps.
that, nope.
Barbara, did you have something? No. Okay, Finley, did you have something else?
No, I was going to just quickly say that I appreciate that you point out that the average is a 35% increase, so if you're less than that, your tax bill will likely be lower. It makes it a little easier for people to understand, because you can do the math and figure out
Right.
your increase and have a better idea. So I
Absolutely.
appreciate that.
As much as we can to help understand it.
Well,
I know,
mine was-
everyone's
mine
going
was
home. They're
35%.
counting.
Mine's 35%, I'm happy.
You're right in line with everyone then.
I'm right
I
in
already
there.
did the math.
2.5 minutes after I got there.
I mean,
So we were all up here doing it.
it went up 100,000, but it was 30%, so.
Yeah. I know, and it's funny, they're used to seeing the letters now, so they go right to the bottom of the letter, look at the value, and panic before they ever read the letter. So I did
True,
talk with the
it's true.
gentleman, and he said, so I did exactly what your letter says not to do. I went right to the bottom. I didn't read anything. All I saw was that value. He goes, but then I went back and I reread the letter. I watched your video. I started to come off the ledge a little bit. So at least there's resources out there to help, you know, so that they're not completely panicked.
Right.
So that's important.
And it is happening everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely so. Okay, if there are no other questions,
No,
we appreciate the
Appreciate you.
update.
Absolutely. And
your
we're
extra time to come in and talk to us.
We're on track to get everything finalized and turned back over by the end of August so that we can do the MS1 and get it submitted on time, so that there won't be any delays in tax rate setting as a result of the valuation anyway. If there's delays,
that's
I mean,
great.
that does happen sometimes, but not on our part anyway this year.
But
So
just one final time, that people can still call up and
they still
schedule
can
an
call up.
appointment.
And I'm still here, obviously, on a regular basis, so even if somebody had missed the window, we're not turning anybody away to talk to them. We're gonna try to accommodate every taxpayer that wants to discuss their assessment, whether it's conforms with the schedule or not. So that's
Yeah.
always the case. Anyone can.
Did I hear that if people don't want to allow somebody in their house, they can do something with the video, and you look at the video and
I mean,
try
our
to make an
goal would be
assessment?
obviously to get in
To
the
get
home.
somebody
Not
to get
everyone
eyes
is
on
still
it, yeah.
comfortable with that. But, right, if they wanted to submit, depending on what their concern was, whether we do a virtual walkthrough, sometimes we need more than just a standalone picture, but we're definitely open to, looking at
To doing
a
whatever you
virtual
can
walkthrough, yeah, a
technology-wise, yeah.
FaceTime walk through the house, absolutely. Whatever we can do, we're trying.
All right, well, that might make some people feel a little more comfortable
Yeah.
with calling. And so that's great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Definitely appreciate your time.
Anytime, and I'll be back in about a month or so, hopefully, when everything's
Some kind of
finalized
final
and get it
wrap-up?
turned back. Yeah, absolutely.
Very good. Thank you.
All right, it was nice seeing you all. You have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
Which brings us to a public hearing. We have a public hearing tonight for acceptance of the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 funds submitted by Finance Director Thomas Boland. Town Council will hold a public hearing to consider the acceptance and expenditure of up to $2.773229 million from the local fiscal recovery funds distributed by the state of New Hampshire through the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 pursuant to RSA 31:95-B and Charter Article 8-15. The funds will be expended in accordance with the guidelines set forth in the ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act.
So, this is the money that was approved back in March by President Biden, and it's finally come through. The Treasury's given their guidelines. There's been a lot of talk through the state. There's been a lot of seminars through the state of what we can and can't spend this money on. Tom will walk you through all that stuff. I just want to let people know that this $2.7 million that we're receiving is part of that fund back in March that President Biden had signed into law about for COVID relief and things of that sort for communities. So, Tom?
Awesome. Good evening, Tom.
Good evening. As has been mentioned, the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 came into existence and was signed in March of this year. It included $350 billion for eligible state, local, territorial, and tribal governments to respond to the COVID-19 emergency. As part of those funds, the state of New Hampshire received $112 million in what they call local fiscal recovery funds to distribute to so-called non-entitlement units of local government. And what that is all of the municipalities in the state of New Hampshire, with the exception of Nashua, Manchester, Dover, Portsmouth, and Rochester. Those communities, because of their size, were given their own separate allocations of money as part of the same plan, but it was a different bucket of funds that their money was coming out of. So of the $112 million that the state of New Hampshire received for the non-entitlement units, those funds were allocated based on a population-based formula to the upwards of 220-plus municipalities in the state. And based on that formula is where Merrimack's total of $2,773,229, that's where that comes from. If accepted by the town, these funds would be received in 2 payments, with 50% available almost immediately, and the other 50% to be delivered in approximately 1 year from now. I think the actual language says not sooner than 12 months from now. The implication being that it would be about a year's time. As Paul mentioned, there are 5 available categories of allowable uses for the towns that accept these funds. And I will just summarize them quickly. If you have any questions about them, we could delve into them a little further. There's an awful lot of guidance and information and examples and whatnot in the literature about these permitted uses, but that's kind of the next step in the process would be to determine what to use the funds for if the town decides that it wants to accept them. The first category of allowable expenses is to support public health expenditures. For example, funding COVID-19 mitigation efforts, medical expenses, behavioral health care, and certain public health and safety staff. Second category is to address negative economic impacts caused by the public health emergency, including economic harms to workers, households, small businesses, impacted industries, and the public sector. The third category is to replace lost public sector revenue, using this funding to provide normal government services to the extent of the reduction in revenue experienced due to the pandemic. And there's a very kind of fairly cut and dried formula for determining whether you have in fact had lost revenues. It's measured over a 4-year period. So it's not just revenues in the past year, it's revenues for 2020 through 2023. Those 4 years is the period over which you can look at your revenues and determine if there's any reduction. And the presumption is that the reduction is attributable to the pandemic. You don't have to prove that that's the case. If you have a reduction in your revenues, the presumption is that it was the result of the COVID pandemic. The fourth category of allowable uses is to provide premium pay for essential workers, offering additional support to those who have and will bear the greatest health risks because of their service in critical infrastructure sectors. And the last category, which I think you'll hear about a little bit more later in this evening's agenda, is to invest in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure, making necessary investments to improve access to clean drinking water, support vital wastewater and stormwater infrastructure, and to expand access to broadband internet. So again, if the town chooses to accept these funds, they are really, even though they're being distributed by the state, they are federal funds, and we would be subject to federal reporting requirements. There's a report of expenditures that we would have to make starting in October of this year, and then every October thereafter until the funds are spent. There is a requirement that the funds be committed to be spent on an identified allowable use by the end of 2024. But they have to be committed, but they don't have to actually be spent until the end of 2026. So there would be some ongoing reporting requirements of us to document that we use those funds for the allowable uses that are permitted as part of the act. That's a quick overview of a very complicated process. But if you have questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
There was one thing that Tom left out, is that, actually two things. The school has their own pot of money, so they get their own money from this act in the state. Merrimack Village District, however, does not. So Merrimack Village District and village districts throughout the state do not get a separate funding source. It's all rolled up into what we got of the $2.7 million. But the school definitely gets their own money.
Okay. Anybody have any questions at this point? Nancy?
I have a little note down in terms of suggestions, and then I realized later on in the agenda that's going to be answered, so
Okay,
to be determined.
right. Reporting requirements that you mentioned a couple of times. Do you find those to be onerous, or is that a concern to us really, or?
Not a concern.
It's
You
kind
know,
of more the course of the day for you as far as having to fill out another form
It's
once a year,
basically-
once every 6 months or
Yeah.
something?
Yeah, we would, it's perfectly understandable that you'd have to document how you're spending this and make sure it's in accordance with the guidelines. And we've done similar things to that in the past, and should not be an issue.
Okay. Any other questions before I open it up to the public? So we'll open the public hearing at 7:48 and ask if anybody wants to come and ask questions or talk about the acceptance of the whatever it was.
Our
ARPA funds to the amount of $2,773,229, probably at 14 cents, but it looks like it's rounded off. So if anybody has any questions in the public that wants to talk about this, now's a good time to do that. Did I say 7:48? You did. So I have another half a minute to wait. Huh?
I always find you have to have a different number.
It looks better, at least if you, so we'll say it's 7:49 and we'll close the public hearing. Is there any other comments from the council at this point? Do we need to take a vote on accepting this?
So you need to accept and expend. The way it's said, acceptance and expenditure up to $2,773,229 from the local recovery fund distribution.
Oh,
Finley?
I move the acceptance and expenditure of up to $2,773,229 from the local fiscal recovery funds distributed by the state of New Hampshire through the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. And as Councilor Boyd would say, and let the town manager or his proxy sign for it.
Or, not and/or, but or.
Or one or the other, okay, point taken, thank you.
Sign on this.
Okay, motion by Finley, seconded
Second.
by Nancy.
Sure.
Any other comments on the motion? Everybody understand? Barbara?
Once we vote on it, I think it needs to be amended because we have not decided yet how to expend. So is it premature to says we grant approval to accept and expend, when we don't know what that means yet.
It's fine to do that because we have until the 2026 to expend the funds. And so we're saying we're going to accept and
Can we
expend.
just say,
Barbara?
you know,
Your mic, I think
spend on,
Your mic, I think.
Can we just maybe add wording that says on agreed upon expenditures? Because it sounds.
Nothing can be expended without agreement.
I know, but it sounds very loosey-goosey to me, but it could be just me.
Paul?
The reason why you're accepting and expending is because if you just accept the money, then you do
Goes in
not
the general
increase
fund.
the appropriation. So we have no authority to expend the money. So that's why on all these gifts, we do accept and expend. And at this case, we're doing an accept and expend. It's a little different because I did not want to muddy the water and bring suggestions in as well when we got the money, because the money is for 2.7, it's the act. We have categories that we can look at and discuss later on to expend those if the town council sees fit.
Okay.
So that's why we're asking for it this way this time.
I understand your concern, but if we don't say that we're going to expend it, then it
Got it.
goes into the general fund and we can't spend it.
got it.
And then we get slapped by the federal government.
Well, I don't want to be slapped.
All right, if there's no further questions, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 7-0. Thank you, Tom. Under old business. Oh, legislative updates. I might as well go by the actual agenda instead of,
Details.
what the heck? So legislative updates from state reps. We did receive a letter from House Majority Whip Representative Janine Nodder asking us to read it into the record in place of her being here tonight. So my fellow Merrimack residents, as a senior member of the Merrimack delegation, I am pleased to report that we passed a budget that will help our town to thrive and flourish. From tax cuts to increasing education funding, the budget is jam-packed with reforms and policies that will benefit every single citizen of our town. The new state budget will cut the statewide education property tax by $100 million, meaning that residents will see lower property tax bills the next time they go to pay. In order to ensure that the towns will not see a loss in revenue due to this tax cut, the state will reimburse the town for any decrease in funding due to this property tax relief. That's not all. The state budget that we passed will directly invest in Merrimack and its citizens. Not only did we cut the meals and rooms tax, we also created a fund that will send 30% of the money collected from that tax back to towns like Merrimack to invest back into our community. This protects a valuable revenue source from being siphoned off by the state for funding. To help our local businesses even more, we cut the business enterprise and the business profits tax, helping our local businesses from Los Primos to Abel Ebenezer to the Village Eatery, to name but a few. Furthermore, our Republican representatives kept their promise to guard the New Hampshire advantage by fully phasing out the interest and dividends tax, which is widely known as a hidden income tax on our citizens. In addition to all the tax cuts, the state budget invests in Merrimack's top priorities. This budget allocated $15.6 million for grants and wastewater projects to help us improve our water quality around town. This budget also increases education funding by $100 million and provides an extra $17.5 million for free and reduced meals for students, assuring that every Merrimack student has the opportunity to pursue a quality education regardless of income. In total, our state is going to save $172.5 million from the budget that was passed. Let me end this letter with one more bit of good news. We have Senator Daniels to thank, for the most part, for his efforts to make sure that tolls at Exit 10 will be taken down and become history. We thank the voters for entrusting us to work for you in the state legislature, and we will continue to do so. Respectfully, Representative Janine Nodder, House Majority Whip. If there's no other state reps, then we'll move on. Thanks. Town Manager's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I got a couple items on the town manager's report. First of all, the drainage improvement project on Joppa Road near Derry Street is expected to be substantially completed tomorrow, July 16th. It's funny, with both our projects, the roundabout and this Joppa Road intersection, we have come across some unique situations with our utilities being in line or through some of our drainage pipes that we need to get them rerouted. And utility companies are very busy this time of year, so that's why you may be seeing a delay. Don ran out of room when I started talking, I see that. So that's why you see some of these delays, like this Turkey Hill project should have been done like 2 weeks ago. However, a gas line is running right through one of our drainage lines. So we can't do anything until the gas company comes in and does their part, which is very methodical. They're dealing with natural gas, so it has to be, but very methodical, and they got to take their time to do it. And with all the rain we've been having, puts delays on that. Consolidated Communications is doing a huge fiber upgrade in town. So we have some telephone lines that need to be moved on the roundabout, and we had a meeting with them, and it's like, our contractor's here, just let them dig a trench and drop them into the trench. Can we do that? Yeah, I don't see why not, but, you know, trying to think outside the box to keep these projects moving along to do it, and those are only a couple. So if it seems like they're slow, we're working with utility companies to get stuff done. And we're finding, as we find these situations, we're trying to correct them. So, she came back in the room after I finished, so. Nah, just talking about all the utility problems we've had in Joppa and Turkey Hill, so. One other bit of good news is repairs to the Abbey Griffin Bandstand are scheduled to begin on Thursday, July 22nd, and run through Sunday, July 25th. The work includes replacing all the railing and ballast in the bandstand, rebuilding the steps that lead up to the bandstand, and adding a handrail at the end of the entrance on each side of the steps. The bandstand will be closed during these repairs. The Phase 3 construction of the wastewater treatment plant began on July 5th. The construction contractor, Methuen Construction, has begun mobilizing construction trailers and equipment. The cost of a $17 million upgrade project will be completed October 5th, 2023. 23, so 2 years from October. Effective on, my last bit of news is effective on July 1st, we just want to let the residents know that the sewer rate has increased to $304 per year. They'll be seeing half of that on their December bill. The increase was a scheduled increase that we planned on for paying for these bonds that were voted in. And as well, commercial and industrial sewer user rates also increased by 12%, which is what we voted in, approved the increase to be. Be happy to take any questions. Yes, I do. Thank you. I'm glad you reminded me. It's happy news for the town of Merrimack. It's sad news. Fire Chief Matthew Duke has tendered his resignation and will be resigning as Merrimack Fire Chief effective July 30th. We are currently going out on a national-wide search for a new fire chief, and we will be putting out advertisements very shortly to replace Chief Duke. So
He's retiring.
he is retiring as of July 30th. Wish him all the best in his future endeavors.
Okay. Any other questions for yes, Barbara?
How are the tennis courts coming?
Tennis courts have been delayed because of the weather. Hopefully, they will be opened up if everything goes well end of next week.
These are at Wasserman, or?
These are the tennis courts at Wasserman. The
Any
rain
other
has
questions for the
really-
town manager at this point? He's shaking his head. Okay, thank you. We have no consent agenda tonight. Getting into old business. Trustee of the trust funds vacancy discussion submitted by the town council chair and vice chair. The town council to discuss filling the trustees of trust funds vacancy left by the passing of John Jack Balcom in accordance with RSA 3122 and Charter Article 6-2. Paul, do you want to go over the
Yes.
basics that you found?
Yes. So in looking at, just give me 1 second, but in looking at what the options for the council to fill this vacancy, you have two options. First option is the secretary of the trustee of trust funds or the chairman, Chris Christensen, can bring a name forward, and the town council could vote on that name and appoint that person. Or the town council can run the vacancy like they do any other committee vacancy, where you put it out there asking for volunteers, get the volunteers, interview the volunteers with the vice chair and chair, and Chairman Chris Christensen, and then make a determination. The appointment definitely does have to come through, though, through the town council, and you would have to do that by public vote. The person would be on the trustee of trust funds and take up the remaining portion of Jack's term, which ends on April 2023.
That's 2023, not 2022.
Right,
A lot of
it's-
times when we appoint somebody, it only goes to the next election. But in this case, it's written into the charter that it goes for the rest of the term
Right.
that was vacated. So it would be a almost two-year appointment.
Correct.
So the question before the council is what do you think is the best way to approach this? Lon?
Yeah, is there any time sensitivity to either option in terms of, do we need to do this more quickly or not?
Honestly, Councilor Woods, this trustee of trust funds are only 3 members. So they have to deal with a lot of business that goes in front of them, with one of them being no longer sitting. They only have 2 members, so to hold a meeting, they both have to be present at that meeting. So Chairman Christensen would request that this position gets filled as soon as possible to do it, instead of delaying it. So they asked for us to.
But I think the legal response is that no, there's not a 20-day limit or
No,
something
there is
like that.
there's no limit set like a town council or anything like that. It's as long as, the council
As long
wants
as
to.
it takes to
set
find
it.
a good replacement. But
Right.
preferably sooner than later. Go ahead.
Yeah, if I may, I'm a little sensitive to not providing transparency by just going with the recommendation of the chair of the trustees of the funds. I think it should be advertised.
I agree. You want to add something, Vin?
No.
Oh, okay. So I was thinking we would promote a combination of this. Certainly encourage the chairman to bring forth any names, or encourage him to have that person submit an application, but that we would open it up to the public for anybody that feels that they want to be on that position to submit a resume of some sort. And then we would interview them through the interview committee and then bring that to the council.
Correct.
The way we do for any other committee seat.
Correct.
Okay. Does anybody have any other thoughts on that? Seeing none.
Do you want to do a 30-day advertisement like we have done in the past?
Yeah, we do need to set some kind of limit.
Especially in the summer, too.
Is that, yeah. Is that appropriate, do you think, 30 days?
And then it would be.
And if we get nobody,
we have
we'll
a
add
month-
it again.
First of all, we have only one meeting in August anyway. So it'd probably be, hopefully, by the first meeting in September, we could have that.
We could have the interview
Information about-
results, hopefully, by the first meeting in September.
Right.
So the 30 days accommodates that.
Yeah.
Is that a little long for them? Because
Well, I mean-
technically they do have a quorum, but it's a quorum of 2.
Well, we're talking about a couple of months. I mean, a
Okay.
quorum of 2.
I don't know how active they are
I don't
as a matter of
imagine they're
course.
that active. I mean, it's not like, go ahead, Paul.
Sorry, excuse me. We could ask Tom because Tom sits in the meetings
Okay.
as part of his additional responsibilities.
Tom,
So,
can you help us out here?
I mean, I can tell you that for the most part, they meet monthly, with the exception that during the summer, they often don't meet in the month of August.
well.
They definitely meet in the month of September, and at that point, they're looking to approve the MS9 and MS10 forms that have to get filed with the state. But I would expect that the two remaining members would be available and able to do that. So, but yeah, that's what I can tell you about their activity.
It's easy, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we're okay, personally, but
Yeah, it goes
That-
by September 9th, we should be able to.
Yep.
Perfect.
Okay, so
so,
30-day advertisement, letter of interest and resume. Send it to Becky in the town manager's office. She'll gather all the
She'll arrange
information, let
interviews,
you
yeah.
and Finley know, and then set up interviews in the last 2 weeks of August,
All
I
good?
take it.
It's good, yep.
good.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Which brings us to number 2, the Town of Merrimack and the Merrimack Youth Agreement Review, submitted by Town Manager Paul McCallie. Town Council to consider the renewal of a 3-year agreement between the Town of Merrimack and the Merrimack Youth Association.
Thank you. At our last meeting, we talked about adding language in 2 areas of the contract. The first area of the contract that we talked about adding some language was the portion related to funding, number 18. And that was the last sentence on page 4. If you looked at it, it says in that first paragraph, the last sentence that begins year. It says year, comma, payment will not be made in the following year on July 1st and will be distributed by mutual agreement. That is if we do not receive an audit by June 30th. So the payment won't be made on July 1st. If the audit comes in afterwards, between MYA and Town Council at that point, mutual agreement of a payment schedule for the following year. That was some of the language that was, that we talked about. The other area we talked about, I believe, was on page 1, the second item. We changed some of the words in here.
Is that the highlighted? In addition to
Yeah.
the program,
Yeah.
I give priority.
Right, yes. Given priority to Merrimack residents in the programs.
No residents shall be turned away.
And no residents will be turned away. We've had conversations with MYA. Their bylaws need to be amended if this contract gets passed, because their bylaws do not include outside participation. And they are working on amending their bylaws. If the council approves this contract, they will they're working on amending their bylaws for outside participation.
Well, they had outside participation this past year,
In COVID, but that was,
but they're going to catch up and
that,
amend the
yes,
bylaws.
yeah, because it was COVID and it was extreme circumstance.
Yeah.
So why amend the bylaws if it's not gonna be in your future contracts? Now that they're asking for it in future contracts, they are working on. And Rick, sorry, I didn't mean to say, Rick Green, you're the vice president from the MOA, is here to answer all your questions.
Thank you. I think I can clarify that a bit. It was an unusual year, obviously, for everyone, including sports, but the thought was that this was a trial, if I recall, to not only fill that temporary void, but to see how it goes. And fortunately, it went pretty well. So the Merrimack Youth Association is comfortable trying to keep this as a permanent fix, if you will. So that's why we haven't amended the bylaws yet.
Okay, thanks.
And the other thing we talked about too, Rick, is that most of the programs have, I hate to call it this way, but recruiting elements to them. You're not allowed to recruit. Is that the case, where you're not allowed to recruit from, say, Amherst, a kid who's a great baseball or football player? You're not allowed to be recruiting if they have the programs in their town? Is that correct?
Absolutely, that's correct. The intention of this is not to recruit or to build winning teams. The intention is solely to make the experience better for our Merrimack kids.
And safety.
And that's what you're going to put in your bylaws?
Yeah.
Okay. Any comments or questions? Finley?
I just was curious, and it's not extremely important, well, it is kind of important, I guess. How will you be notifying of bylaw changes, or, is there notification that has to happen? Will the members and participants be notified of these changes? Because I've actually had a couple calls on this, and that was their concern, and I said our concern was that the money that the town gives to the MYA is spent for Merrimack youth and not the outside interest, so that's just for my clarification, so if I.
Sure. I think the bylaws are presently available on our website and would continue to be so, and that would probably be the.
No, I mean the change, where will there be
Can you
notifications?
spike out the
so-
change or something, or
Yeah,
notify
right,
people?
because-
coming out?
Absolutely. We could notify the public on our website if that's appropriate to you guys.
I don't know what it is, I was just
they-
curious if you had, if there was a method to go forward with.
I've read the bylaws just recently, and there is a method that they have to follow to change the bylaws. I don't recall every step,
Sure.
but there is a section in their bylaws that talks about changing the bylaws, notifying holdings, X number, publication, 30 meetings, stuff like that, a hearing to discuss and all those other things. I believe that's in your bylaws.
I believe you're right. It's been a while since we've amended
Yeah.
the
Sure, yeah,
primary bylaws.
great, thanks.
Okay, great. Nancy?
Oh, thank you. I was just reviewing the notes from our last meeting where this was discussed about the 3-year agreement. And I noted that one of the issues that was raised was clarifying the language on page 1 of the documents that we were given regarding certain sports activities. Certain was one of the words that were used. Previously, it was listed only as football and lacrosse, but the wording was changed. So I was wondering if any program in the MYA will be open to out-of-town participants or just those certain?
Thank you,
groups?
Nancy. Yes, the change will allow any program to do that, though I don't think they will all take advantage of that. It's more practical in some sports than others. One that we think might take advantage is our wrestling program, which is very small. But yes, you're correct in saying that the idea is to allow all sports to do that. Last year with lacrosse and football was part of the trial.
Okay, just a follow-up question.
Go ahead.
Thank you. And can you tell me if there are enough Merrimack participants to make whatever teams, does that then mean that there will be no out-of-town students, no out-of-town players sought to fill? So it will be Merrimack first and out-of-town players only if we can't put teams
Necessary.
together?
That is correct. And a good example is last year we tried this with football, and they ended up welcoming about 16 out-of-town players out of roughly 100 total. But presently, as they've recently opened registration, they don't expect they're going to need any out-of-town players in our football program. Now, that may be different in a different program this year, but that's an example of exactly what you're speaking to.
Lon?
Yeah, I have several questions, but sticking with the language about out of town or changing the bylaws beyond COVID, I need to better understand the compulsion for, I think you mentioned quality of programming or whatever, that the MYA feels is necessary.
Lon, I think the easiest way for me to explain it would be to go back to our football example, where we might have had, for instance, an 80-pound player playing against someone considerably larger because of a shortage of players. And this alleviates that type of situation from happening. And that can also be the case, especially in wrestling, where wrestling is based on players' weight. So to me, that's the best example of the reason we're doing this. And unfortunately, generally speaking, youth sports participation is down in general at MYA. We could, I think, discuss exactly why that is for a long time, but regardless, our numbers are not what they once were, and we're hoping to try to get those numbers higher.
Okay, I accept the premise to a point. I don't know that I understand the guarantee that if you're trying to be safe with player size and number of players and whatever, that there's any guarantee that the player who comes in from out of town to beef up your number isn't the same 80 pounds that you're worried about playing against the little 55-pound or whatever. That's probably extreme, but
I think I understand what you're asking. In fact, though, we would be accepting players on an individual basis, so if they didn't meet the proper criteria, they wouldn't be invited. So if we need a 50-pound wrestler, we'll be looking for someone out of town who is approximately that weight, or they won't be invited. Is that what you're getting at?
I understand the aim and I understand the concern. But I'm not convinced it's going to work.
Okay.
Did you have more
Lon,
questions,
what,
Nancy?
what is your concern? I guess that's why I'm.
Sorry, just a minute.
What is your concern about it?
I think we're trying to fix a problem that exists with language that sounds good and that in its intent does perhaps lead to solving the problem. But I'm not sure that you're going to get the right, you're going to be able to find the right participant from outside.
Then you won't be able to do it.
Okay, that's okay with me. And
I mean, if they have, I'm sorry, I shouldn't be answering for
No,
you.
please, Nancy.
Because I'm honestly trying to understand, because it might be real legitimate, I just don't understand. If they, let's say if they have 12-year-old, they have different age groups with certain sports. And let's say they have the 12 and 13-year-olds, and then they have, I'm just making this up, 14 and 15-year-olds, and those are the categories. And beforehand, they didn't have enough to fill the rosters for both, they used to have to combine them. And that's where the safety issue came up. Now, what they intentionally want to do, my understanding is, let's say they need two 12-year-olds to do a roster, and they need 4 14-year-olds. That's all they could take. They couldn't take a 15 or 16-year-old. The criteria is the age group. And they could only take them if they have open rosters. Is that,
That's correct, Nancy.
okay? Because if the roster is filled, they're not going to invite anybody. But they have to be able to fit into the criteria for that team. Age, weight, skill set, whatever the criteria is. But are you concerned that won't happen?
if that's specifically spelled out somewhere, that's much more clear.
Okay,
I'm not sure it is.
okay.
I'm not sure I'm comfortable with, and no offense, no disrespect meant or anything. But if your bylaws say today what they said 2 years ago, and we're going to go ahead and pass a contract tonight, we're being just as short-sighted or behind the 8 ball as the MYA is presently in terms of inviting out-of-town kids into our programs. Am I making any sense at all tonight?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I take a
understand.
little bit of an exception, because I don't think we're trying to tell MYA how to run their programs.
That's,
And so
Because we
that's
can't.
exactly why I'm being as cautious as I'm being.
Yeah.
I understand that. I
So you think
understand
we're
that.
being too prescriptive? That we're telling them too much?
No, I think,
I think he's
well,
saying we're putting the cart before the horse a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah. Because right now, their bylaws has not been amended. We don't know how this is spelled out, that it's actually going to work in, as far as who we're gonna let in and not let in, yet you're concerned that we're ready to sign a contract to give them that free rein to go off and do that before they amend their bylaws.
A contract which, if I'm reading the right copy, says, whereas the town is desirous of making recreational programs available to the youth of Merrimack, and then goes on to say with the addition of outside participants. And, you know, is the town subverting the MYA's interest, or are we just, is the contract now written anticipating the change in the bylaws?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's a chicken and an egg kind of a situation, and we're merely saying, from our perspective, we're not gonna hinder you from doing this, but until they change their bylaws, they can't do it. I mean, their bylaws are the governing rules. Pardon?
They did it last year.
Yeah, because that was the exception.
Well, that was with our understanding and an exceptional situation.
And
I
again,
agree.
okay, I'm done with that subject, thank you. Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Some of the more populated programs, I believe, like soccer and football and perhaps lacrosse, maybe even the girls softball teams, is there some formal association with either state or national organizations? I'm going to just say one set of letters that I think I remember being accurate. That's AAU.
Yes.
Do the funds of the town, by contract, pays to the MYA, or the MYA accepts from the town? Do some of those funds go to a dues structure or an association fee for leagues?
That's correct, Lon, they do. For example, baseball is presently part of Cal Ripken, and I couldn't give you any numbers, but we do pay a fee to Cal Ripken to be part of that program. Once upon a time, it was the Little League organization, but now it's Cal Ripken. So, yes, each of our sports do have at least a state, if not a national organization that they belong to.
Okay, thank you.
So is your concern that town funds are getting paid to those organizations, or, I mean, because I'm sure you could play the books and just say, well, town funds are only going to help buy uniforms, and the organizations are finding the funding through their own fundraising to pay that fee. But, I mean, that's, pardon?
Or registration fees.
Or registration fees, or something like that. So it's like when people argue that if you want to make a donation to United Way, but you don't want to support all their programs, just say which one you want to donate to.
Right, you can do that.
And that you're safe that way. Well, I disagree with that. I think you've donated to United Way, and they're distributing the money the way they want. As long as there's a big enough pot not going to that organization, they can say that your money didn't go there. But, you know, it's hard for me to believe that you can clearly think, unless they put a budget out and then they take out a chunk of money from what you provided, which, whatever. But anyway, so some funds do get paid out to those organizations, and they do receive a relatively small amount from the town to help them with their organization. I think a large portion of that goes to the executive expenses, like the auditor and the insurance and things like that.
Probably.
But to support the overall program.
Could you give me just a rough percentage of the money that the town pays to MYA that goes to funding those dues and fees?
No, honestly, I could not do that, Lon, at this time, although I could get you those numbers tomorrow. The directors would be more familiar with those sums. I'd be happy to
thank
get that
you.
to you. You're welcome.
Nancy?
Thank you. Just have a question, having had children play MY sports, I know with Nancy, kids growing up, I think many people in town are just used to the MYA being specific to Merrimack children. And this would be a change, even though I know there were sort of some changes this year. I think probably numbers are down. I would imagine maybe a little post-COVID stuff, and some parents aren't back in the swing of things, and kids may not be ready for that. And some parents may be apprehensive about Delta variants and what that's going to mean for, close interactions of kids in those activities. That said, because there has been such a long history of Merrimack children only being the MYA participants, is there a plan, or what is the plan for making public really understand that, like deadlines for registration, if you're trying to, I can imagine as a coach, if you're trying to put a team together and you got 16 kids and you need 18, there are parents who say, oh, the sign-up deadline's not a really big deal. I could, at the last minute sign up. And then a coach who may have tried to fill a team now has 2 kids from out of town, and we've got a late kid from Merrimack, and we're saying Merrimack kids can't be excluded. So what's the plan for either kids arriving in town that are new residents, or late registrations, or how will you balance that to make sure that you can have those MYA kids, parents are aware that they're going to be, we're going to be looking for children from other communities to fill rosters if we don't have our own kids, just to make sure it's like really out in public, because I just think we've done this for so many years this way. It will be a change, and I just think it'll be important for the public to know, and maybe for us to know what the plan is, how you're going to do that.
Good question, Nancy.
Thank you.
I think the important thing to remember is that we're not going to turn away a Merrimack child. So in your particular example, if that were to happen, we're going to still make a spot, or find a spot, or create a spot for that Merrimack child who may have registered late. Our plan is to kind of keep that in mind during all registrations, so that if we do have a child who's new to town, we can still absorb that child without negatively affecting the team. So, and as far as advertising it goes, I think that's a good point, because it is relatively new, and I think probably the best thing we can do is spell it out on our website.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Good question.
And probably it's been open for discussion because they've had they've done some experimenting, and I'm sure the word's gotten out about that too. That there were some kids in football, right?
Yes.
And what was the other ones? Was it
Lacrosse had
Okay.
just a couple last
So
season.
I bet there's been some discussion spontaneously, like, oh, we've got some whatever Amherst, whatever kids. But I understand your point.
Well, it used to be MYA, if I may,
ahead.
was a recreational program only. It didn't get to the levels of traveling soccer until years later. The football program, I don't know when that began, but I think it was always part of a national thing, I believe. But the little difficulties I might be having is I don't want to stop the support that the town gives to them, but I really want them to have an honest, serious conversation with all the players that are, not players in a sports way, but I don't want to say stakeholders because it drives me crazy hearing the term, but I guess
People
that's where,
involved.
people involved. And so, because I do have mixed feelings on it, I understand the need, especially in the football program in particular because of the weight and age limits. And, but if I thought, I would love to see our money go to the rec programs anyhow. I'm not looking for any changes to solidify that, but, so anyhow, I don't know where I'm going with that. I would like the people who are who are involved with the MYA have those conversations and have it hashed out so everybody understands what it means to the program.
One of the things I've heard from several of you tonight that I think we could do better with is making sure that our parents understand these changes. And like always, good communication is important to any organization. So, yeah, I'm comfortable saying we can clarify everything that's being changed if it is approved.
And your participants need to understand as well, so that they don't feel like they're being benched because somebody from Bedford's playing or something like that.
Sure.
They need to understand what their aspects of the whole program is. Anyway, any other comments or thoughts? Do we have a motion to accept the contract as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Nancy and seconded by Barbara to accept the contract with the MYA for the next 3 years as presented, effective last July 1st. Right? Any other thoughts? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
And abstaining? That passes 6-1-0 with Lon Woods in opposition. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Okay, good night.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And it just needs the town manager or designee signature as presented, right? Okay, thank you. That brings us to number 3, the transfer station swap shop. Why did I suddenly have trouble? Transfer station swap shop reopening discussion.
Say it fast.
Submitted by Town Manager Paul McCallie, the Town Council, to discuss reopening the swap shop located at the transfer station. And I've seen a couple of emails come through from people requesting that we reopen it. So Paul, you want to fire away?
Basically, we, when we reopened up Town Hall, encouraging mask use for the non-vaccinated, but not having the mask mandate anymore, the council at that time thought that we needed a little bit more time to see how things would play out with the swap shop, and basically, without a vote but through consensus, thought that we should hold off. I'm coming forward to the town council to ask that the swap shop be reopened with no limitations put on it, with the signs put on the doors and the walkway going up. Unvaccinated, the same sign we have here would be not recommended, encouraged. Mask would be encouraged for unvaccinated people. People have thrown suggestions, a 10-minute limit, this, that. We don't want to get into policing the swap shop. If people are comfortable using the swap shop, they can go in, do their thing. We'd still have, please respect social distancing signs. I have talked to the foreman at the solid waste division down at the transfer station, and he says his guys are ready to go, just need the word. We can open up on Saturday, have the grand reopening on Saturday, so to speak, with it. A lot of the emails that the town council got, but also that I've received, is that people are going through their house, they have some items that they want to repurpose, they don't want to throw in the waste stream, but they're ending up throwing it in the waste stream. So, things of that sort that could be repurposed, and that's all I'm asking for, is that the town council basically allow us to reopen the swap shop through normal operations the way we were pre-COVID, with the 2 exceptions, the social distancing, reminding people of social distancing, and unvaccinated people, we encourage you to wear a mask. But we're not going to be policing that like we don't police it in our buildings.
Which is why we didn't open it.
Right,
Right, we don't have the staff to police it.
right,
Nor do
exactly.
we care to.
Exactly.
Any comments or suggestions from the council?
I agree, I think it's time. I think you're right, the last time, we were not open yet. There were still concerns, I think enough time has gone by. People who are concerned about issues won't go. Don't go. If you're concerned about it not being policed, no, it's not gonna be policed. Our transfer station people don't have time to do that. So if you're concerned about not being able to be controlled, know that you should not be going. That's all.
Nancy Murphy?
I too would support reopening it, although, to the points made about people throwing things out because they felt that the swap shop wasn't available and that was their only option. There are many options for repurposing items. Free Merrimack cites a number of sites on social media forums. And I would just hope that, as community members, people would be able to respect other people's personal space, and recognition that just because, some of us are able to be vaccinated or choose to be vaccinated, that some people may not be able to be vaccinated, and they should have a right to be able to go to the swap shop as well. So I would hope that our community, and I think that it will happen, respect time limits and the fact that children are not vaccinated and kids are going to be in there, and like a nice smooth transition back to open swap shop, with the understanding that should, we down the road find that Delta variant or other, post-initial pandemic issues come to the point where, we have to look at it again, that would, be up for consideration. So I would agree, it's time. And just, I'm happy, recognize that there's no reason to have to supervise or police, people using it.
Anybody else?
Fully support it.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Lon?
Nah.
Okay.
You don't need a motion.
No, we don't need a motion. I just want to, let the council know if the council had some.
Lon?
I was just going to relate that for a fellow that's been around long enough to see fistfights when the whole dump was a swap shop, without anyone looking after what's really going on up there, talk about enforcement or not as just talk about enforcement or not. I don't have any problem with it being open, but without any provisions at all, just open it up. If it works, it works. So what?
So I agree we shouldn't put any provisions on it, but I would encourage people to be social and civil. We don't really want fist fights in there. There are times when two people want the same thing, and you'll just have to work it out amongst yourselves. We're not going to police that. We're not going to try and control it. So
No,
if it becomes a problem, we'll shut it down
We
again.
can close it down, that's right.
And
That's exactly
just
right.
understand that if folks can't behave,
So
it's
be
like
it.
anything, you lose it.
And just one other thing, we do have a camera that swings in, and the person at the scale can actually monitor the camera. So there is a camera that's pointed towards the swap shop too. So if they see some of these things happening, they will make a phone call, which we have in the past. I'm sorry, I'm pointing to the chief of police because the police, which we have in the past. And if it does become a problem, like the council said, we'll shut it down. Everybody's got to be,
I mean, this thing was pre-COVID, and the citizens figured out how to use this, and we didn't have any issues. I'm pretty confident that the residents will figure out how to use it post-COVID.
Okay.
I'm okay with that. It'll be grand reopening on Saturday, so we're going to open it up on Saturday.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you. No fireworks.
Having a ribbon cutting, Barbara.
We got all our fireworks done on the 4th. And quite a few went off after everybody left. If anybody besides me was around to watch them. There were 3 or 4 bursts of some nice fireworks. New business, number 1, acceptance of donations to the Parks and Rec Department Scholarship Fund, submitted by Parks and Rec Director Matthew Kasparius. The Town Council to consider the acceptance and expenditure of a donation in the amount of $4,000 from Merrimack Friends and Families to the Parks and Rec Department to be used towards the Camp Scholarship Fund pursuant to RSA 31:95-B and Charter Article 8-15.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Merrimack Friends and Family has been donating money from the town. This basically, for those that don't know, I believe they also gave the school $4,000. So they raised $8,000 from the yard sale that they had out here. So, yes, so they give money back to the community all the time. And they do a bunch of things for the town of Merrimack. In this case, they want to send kids to camp. And this will go through the normal process of a scholarship for kids that really can't afford to go to camp, but the parents and the kids still want to go to camp. So this will go towards a good use.
Cool. Does anybody have any questions or comments? What?
No.
I don't think so.
No.
I was just gonna ask, are they gonna have a yard sale this year?
They usually do, and I have not, they work closely with Matt Kasparius, and if I do have it, I'll let you know.
It's usually right out here.
Yeah, they do it in the parking lot on a Saturday, and, you know.
And during COVID, they had it.
And it was socially distant,
Yeah.
and they had people
They did a
spaced
good
out.
job,
And they did
that's
a good
right.
job with it. Because I remember coming in to pick something up at work, and there's all the tables that were
All over the place.
all over the place.
Great. So do we have a motion to accept?
So I'll make a motion to
Funds.
accept and expend a donation in the amount of $4,000 from the Merrimack Friends and Family to the Park and Recreation Department to be used towards Camp Scholarship Fund.
Second.
Motion by Andy and seconded by Lon Woods to accept and expend the donation of $4,000. Yeah, that's a great job. Any other comments, further comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 7-0-0. Bringing us to the reason our chief is here. The approval of number 2, the approval of the Merrimack Hazard Mitigation Plan. Submitted by the Police Chief Brian Levesque, the Town Council to consider a request to approve the Merrimack Hazard Mitigation Plan developed with the National Regional Planning Commission.
With Chief is Casey Mullen from, she's a regional planner from NRPC. They will be here to discuss what this means for the town of Merrimack. But in brief, all our federal funding that we get through FEMA, through police grants, through fire grants, basically, we have to have a hazard mitigation plan. We currently have a hazardous mitigation plan. I believe it's a 2015 document. And this is just looking to update this document, but they're here to answer anyone's questions. And if anybody wants to read the 200-page document, we do have some copies for you for take home, and you can read it tonight.
It's a quick read.
It's a quick read.
Very quick read, yes.
We can skip over the pages that have signatures for being at the meetings, right, or something like that.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Once again, I'd like to introduce Cassie Mullen from the National Regional Planning Commission. I want to thank her and her staff for making this process a lot easier on us. It was a collaborative effort between the fire department, DPW, Merrimack Village District, along with community development to develop this plan. As Town Manager McCallie stated, this plan is done at least every 5 years, and it's required for FEMA funding. It hasn't changed too much, but I'll let Cassie speak about a couple of the highlights.
Most of it's largely the same. We just updated it to reflect all of your recent development that you've had in the past couple years. And FEMA's made a few changes in requirements, such as in the old plans it included preparedness actions, such as like sandbagging, flooding areas, things like that to deal with a hazard after it already happened. So they did away with that, and everything is strictly just hazard mitigation actions. And they added a few different hazards to address, like pandemic and space weather
And what?
Space
Space
weather.
weather.
Space weather.
Yep. And
Sun-
I mean, we
yeah.
decided that it
Is
wasn't.
that like sunburst or something?
Yeah, like solar flares.
Yeah.
So we had to address that,
Good guess.
and we decided that it wasn't a huge threat to Merrimack. So we haven't really included anything different. Yeah. Yep.
Not yet at least.
Yep.
You never know what's going to happen.
So that's.
Does it include spaceships falling out of the
Yeah.
sky or something like that?
So that's pretty much everything that's changed. Just all of the new development. We picked some new mitigation actions for this next 5 years, and it just updated like the history of previous events, which there really hasn't been that many hazards. So
So you just caught my ear. You said you had included some new actions for the
Yep.
next 5 years?
Mhm.
What kinds of actions or what kind of requirements do they come up with?
So FEMA has a list of actions that you can pick from, and it's like a packet that you go through and you pick different things from. They're towards the back, but we picked items like maintaining cooling shelters during heat waves for vulnerable populations, things like that. maintaining surge protectors, and it's all just.
Maintaining surge protectors?
Yep, to protect from lightning and thunderstorm risks.
Outages. Sorry, it's currently most stuff that we're currently doing.
Yep.
So it's just adding it to the actual plan in
Yes.
words and writing.
Yep. So it's just things that, you know, are goals or, you know, things that Merrimack can do to mitigate hazards. And it's, nothing's binding. It's just, these are what we've
that's what I
identified.
like
We're
to
gonna
hear.
work towards that, and you'll reevaluate in 5 years and see where your progress is on those, so.
Okay, good. Barbara?
So would the town be responsible to hold activities toward those mitigation activities?
Yeah, if.
If you're going to review progress in 5 years, you know, what are the parameters that need to be met? And, you know, is it education? Is it everybody gets a free surge protector? You know, because what we're thinking about here is, okay, do we need a program? Do we need a budget? Who does it? You know, the whole project management arena when it comes to that.
So there is a whole cost benefit, responsible party, like bunch of tables for that, and it's just your existing budget, and a lot of the actions are educational, like posting things on websites, and it pretty much just falls to the people that were on the hazard mitigation team, just the department heads, like the police department will post things on their Facebook page, things like that. And some of it's even like maintaining lists of like vulnerable populations to check up on them, things like that, that is already kind of in there.
Okay.
Yep.
It's mostly community involvement and getting the word
Yes.
out to the community, making them aware of any hazards. You know, if we start having a heavy period of rain, you know, where are the potential erosion points and such like that, the heat indexes, and, you know, we going and checking on neighborhoods and stuff. So like I said before, it's pretty much everything that we're currently doing. We just don't have it written down in the plan.
Plus space weather.
Yeah.
That might be in my plan, Tom.
I mean, the bulk of this was done way back when, and it's, you know, the
they're
updates, are
just
just little
updating it,
modifications
yeah.
here and there. and-
Yes.
Correct, with businesses changing addresses and stuff, such like that.
Yep. Just keeping
Okay.
it current with the times.
Any other questions or comments? Going once?
So you need.
Paul.
I believe you need to read that certification.
adoption?
Plan adoption, and vote on that plan adoption.
Yeah, I was
Signature
afraid you were gonna say
page,
that.
And the
too,
signature
that I have
page.
to scan in and send to them.
Yeah.
So, the
It's in our-
certificate of adoption, Town of Merrimack and New Hampshire Town Council, a resolution adopting the Town of Merrimack, New Hampshire Hazardous Mitigation Plan updated 2021. Whereas, the Town of Merrimack has historically experienced damage from natural hazards, and it continues to be vulnerable to the effects of climate change, drought, earthquake, extreme temperatures, flooding, severe wind, lightning, severe winter weather, tornado, and wildfire, resulting in loss of property and life, economic hardship, and threats to public health and safety. And whereas the Town of Merrimack has developed and received conditional approval from the New Hampshire Homeland Security and Emergency Management, HSEM, for its Hazard Mitigation Plan Update 2021 under the requirements of 44 CFR 201.6. And whereas public and committee meetings were held between December 9th of 2020 and March 10th of 2021 regarding the development and review of the Hazard Mitigation Plan Update 2021. And whereas the plan specifically addresses hazard mitigation strategies and plan maintenance procedures for the Town of Merrimack. And whereas the plan recommends several hazard mitigation actions/projects that will provide mitigation for specific natural hazards that impact the Town of Merrimack with the effect of protecting people and property from loss associated with those hazards. And whereas adoption of this plan will make the Town of Merrimack eligible for funding to alleviate the impacts of future hazards, now therefore be it resolved by the Town Council, the Merrimack Town Council. 1, the plan is hereby adopted as an official part of the Town of Merrimack, plan of the Town of Merrimack. Two, the respective officials identified in the mitigation strategy of the plan are hereby directed to pursue implementation of the recommended actions assigned to them. And three, future revisions and plan maintenance required by 44 CFR 201.6 and FEMA are hereby adopted as a part of this resolution for a period of 5 years from the date of this resolution. Four, an annual report on the progress of the implementation elements of the plan shall be presented to the town council by the Merrimack Hazard Mitigation Team. That's what we need to adopt at this point if we have a motion to do so.
So moved.
Moved by Finley Rothaus, second by Nancy Harrington, to adopt this plan for the printing, in case I read it wrong. Any other comments, thoughts, or suggestions?
Signature block's missing.
Actually,
There's an official one here that we're gonna pass around in just a minute. So if that's it, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Opposed, Barbara?
Yeah.
Barbara's opposed?
I don't feel comfortable signing off on something
Okay.
that's this many pages, and I haven't at least looked it over.
I
Not
think
that I
some
don't
of us have
trust
been
you.
through this more than once, or at least once, so.
Yeah.
I understand that. So it passes 6-5-0, 6-1-0, okay, that's better, with Barbara Healy in opposition.
Abstention.
Did you abstain?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. 6-0-1 with Barbara Healy abstaining. That's better, I thought you voted against.
We've got the signature page.
So we have a signature page which we're sending around.
Now, do you have to go to around, are you involved with other towns as well?
Yep, I'm working on
Hopefully.
ordinance right now, and Pelham and Brookline are up next.
Okay.
See, they'll have solar problems too.
Oh, yeah.
They're pretty close, so.
Yeah.
So we thank you for your efforts in helping us out. I know that the assistance we
Huge
get
help.
from NRPC is huge. And it's very beneficial to have someone else to help go through some of this
Thank you guys for
paperwork.
your time, and thank you guys for all your help, too.
Perfect. Thank you.
Good. Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I will, get a copy also, and send you guys digital ones, and then
If you give it to the chief, he'll just give it to me.
And the hazardous mitigation team is
I think we have.
the people that help put this together, update this, and it's an ongoing team.
Yes.
Thank you, Chief.
Barbara's on it? Oh, that's right. Thank you.
Take care now.
And here's John.
Go ahead, come on up. Number 3 on our agenda, the road infrastructure capital reserve account withdrawal request. Am I reading the right one? I am.
Yes.
Submitted by the Deputy Public Works Director, Town Engineer Don Tomala, the Town Council to consider a request to release the remaining drainage funds for 2022, 2020, 2021 from the road infrastructure capital reserve account to perform needed drainage improvements on various projects. What is this?
We are passing around, Don has been working the midnight oil and cracking the whip with some of our vendors. Don would like to give the most what we're passing around is the most up-to-date.
We don't have enough copies.
We don't have.
That's the same thing we have, isn't it?
Yeah, from two angles.
He sent it from both sides. So we got plenty.
Okay.
We got plenty of copies. You guys all have one?
Yes.
We're good.
I knew we didn't have enough for you guys.
So
We have
Don,
extras here, so.
Don's been, like I said, burning the midnight oil, cracking the whip with the vendors, trying to get the most accurate, up-to-date numbers for the council tonight on these couple projects that she has. She'll be going over the project in the vicinity of what the project entails in the vicinity of where the project is in the town of Merrimack, so that people could have an idea of what she's been looking at and working on.
Hey, Dawn.
Hi. So, what we're trying to do is to get ahead of the 8 ball. And this year.
What a strange place to be.
I know, really. what I'd like to do is to do the drainage projects that we usually do in early spring in preparation for our paving program in the first part of summer. This year it became a problem because all the contractors were busy and we couldn't get things done in time, and now it's pushed off our paving a little bit, which we don't like to do. So what I'm trying to do is to do our drainage this fall, and then be able to have it settle over the winter, and then be ready for paving next year. So I've got 3 projects that are along South Babusick Lake Road, which runs from the Amherst Town line all the way up to Babusick Lake Road itself. So the first one is down near the town line, and I actually started this project in 2018, so I've got a lot of projects that I've been designing, but we're holding off for one reason or another, or something more important comes up, that type. So this project in this area has 3 cross culverts that are existing there now. They're 36-inch in diameter. 2 of them are completely buried, and they're metal and collapsing and all sorts of good stuff. So I'm proposing to change the 3 out, increase the size on 2 of them, and just replace the 3 with 2, because they were set at different locations and different elevations for different things, and I can accomplish the same thing using just 2 instead of doing 3. This is going to be a little bit tricky in doing that, because we've got some swamp on both sides of it. So this is going to be a little bit trickier, and this one I had down, and it depends how we do it, whether we close the traffic or not close the traffic. I've got numbers ranging from 98,000 up to 120,000. So I'm working out the details, and whether we completely close the road, it's down on the lower end, but if we do alternating one way, we're up at 122,000, things we need to work out. The second area on South Babusick Lake Road is up near Trowbridge. We have 3 catch basins up here that are failing, along with metal pipe, and it runs down the street a couple hundred feet, so we need to replace all of that. The drainage from this part down was already replaced a few years ago, so we don't need to do that again for this year. I did find one additional catch basin down below that I'm going to have to look at, and we might have to add another catch basin into this mix here. There is one further up, almost to Babusick Lake Road itself. There is another cross culvert, and this one you can see the ends. It's another metal pipe, and this is what's happening, and this is why we need to replace it, because this is one of the roads that I'm going to be targeting for next year. So in addition to doing the drainage for this year, I've also started the master list for paving for next year, basically the collector roads and the bigger roads. I haven't worked the whole program out at this point, but at least getting the roads that are going to need the drainage chosen.
So when you replace something like that, what do you replace it with?
We're going to do RCP pipe, so it's concrete pipe.
Concrete pipe?
Mhm.
Okay, and it'll have for lack of a better term, headworks or something at the end of it or something?
Some of them will, some of them won't. It depends upon where they are.
Rather than just a pipe sticking out?
Right,
or-
right. I like, sometimes you can use a special made end, that type thing, or you can use some rocks. We use whatever we can find.
Okay,
along
to kind of protect the ends so they don't get beat up
Exactly.
like these did.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, let's see.
Similar size, concrete pipe,
Yes,
interior
these will be
diameter?
the same size because they are close to the surface. And that's another reason to go to the RCP
Concrete,
pipe,
yeah.
because the metal pipe obviously does not hold up well, as you know. The second road we are going to target is the Thornton Road West. There are 3 culverts that need to be repaired out there. This is also the headworks of Pennachuck Waterworks, and I did meet with them yesterday in discussion with this, so we're well underway on that one. And this is the first culvert along that road, and it doesn't really show it well, but it's in really sad shape, and they're really close to the road. I'm not going to be able to increase any size, but we need to be able to have a proper in, a proper out, which you can see that it's a mess on there. The second one up is very similar. It's also metal pipe, and we're going to replace it with a HDPE pipe, so plastic pipe, I believe, in this one. And then the last one is also very shallow along that road, and we'll be replacing that with another concrete pipe.
And these are just draining water that
The-
accumulates on the.
The upper two are just draining water from, a ditch or swale over to the other side.
Yeah,
Yes.
but the other side is Pennachuck's water. headworks
It's
or
all,
something.
yeah, yes, exactly.
So we don't have to do anything special to worry about treatment or contamination or anything like that, or?
I will put a separate application into DES for the first one, because it is, and same thing with the Babusick Lake, South Babusick Lake Road, the first set of culverts. In order to do the culverts, we're going to need to protect the ends and pump them out. So yes, we do have to have something a
Oh,
little
okay.
bit more along those.
Because you're gonna effectively impact the water by stirring up the dirt
Correct.
and all that kind of stuff.
Correct. So those are and that's the last of it that I've asking for tonight. Like I said, I have received some different estimates for doing this from a couple different people, and they're ranging, and of course, the costs have increased substantially because that's what's been happening lately. I can tell you that in order to just order this pipe, the RCP, the concrete pipe, is 3 to 4 weeks out. For HDPE, the plastic pipe, we're looking at 6 to 8 weeks out. And if we went to a ductile iron, we're looking at 12 weeks. I mean, the time to get the materials is also going to impact. That's why I need to know now, because they need to put the order in order to get things in before winter.
Okay, and when are you planning to do this work?
As soon as I can get the
The materials in place? Okay,
I don't want to be doing this in the dead of winter. I mean,
no.
absolutely not. So my whole goal is to get this done
Hard enough to
before-
deal with traffic without having to deal with snow and ice, too. Huh?
Exactly.
Okay, any other questions? Finley?
The first question, actually, on that screen you have up right now, Merrimack's on the left side of that. I'm looking north on this map right here?
Correct.
Okay. I couldn't get it together in my head, so, all right.
Stinker Road
So
going,
this,
and that's-
this line right here that's
Yeah.
coming through, that would be the Nashua line,
I can't,
the city line, right?
right, and this is Nashua, and that's Merrimack.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Correct.
okay.
So we're right on the
I
edge.
I had it
I
visual
went to
going
the
wrong.
edges of town this time.
Yes, you are. Well, my next question is, all contractors are busy. I don't care what line of work they're in, they're all busy. Is this a crucial, I'm wondering, when things slow down possibly next year, would there possibly be better pricing about it? Or are these critical to get done immediately?
Some of them are getting critical.
Okay.
The ones on South Babusick Lake Road, we're having cave-ins, and you can see where the holes that
Yeah.
form in the street, well, something's happening underneath that.
Right.
And that's what we need to do, the ones
Okay.
on.
Because it is crazy. I mean, if everybody's got so much work, nobody's bidding low.
Right.
And so,
And I'm still working on the South Babusick. I might try to do like a bundle instead of having them separate, and maybe we can get the cost down.
Yeah.
I'm working on that.
no, I appreciate that. I'm sure you are. Thanks, Hon.
Anybody else? Going once? Okay, so, Paul, there's funding to the amount of 252,000 and,
Yes, and the road, yes, we put money aside every year when we do the capital reserve funding for the road infrastructure for drainage projects, and these are just a culmination of combining some 2 years' worth of funding.
So-
And there's still some left over.
There's about 100,000 left over from the last year.
Right.
I've committed everything else. It hasn't all been spent yet, but
Right.
it's
But-
been committed. So there's about 100,000 plus or minus on that, and added to the 250,000 from this year.
But basically what that means for the council is that, yes, the money is available, and we do, because your agent's to expend, that's why we're in front of you asking you to expend the money out of road infrastructure. But we do look at it over couple of years, because the projects are getting larger in cost and larger in size.
And I will say that all of these projects are on our drainage master list, which we meet with a couple times a year, different there's several of us that are on this committee, and we work together, figure out which ones are the most important. So I've taken the ones that are redlined. I do have one more that I wasn't quite ready to prepare for tonight. There will be one more if I can get that together. I'd like to get that done this year also. And then there'll be a little bit of money left over for emergency-type issues.
Dawn, I hate
Not
that.
that you ever come up with those, but
Hate to ask this question, but by doing these projects, would that help us on our MS4?
Yes, absolutely.
So that's another reason. Does double the duty. It helps us in the MS4 as well.
And you were saying these roads are due to be paved, or at
Next
least
year.
several of them, and so you want to get this done ahead of time.
Right, because I
Next
want
year.
them to winter over, to settle out.
Settle
and
out so we
then
don't have
we
any
won't
of
have
these
the
sinkholes, yeah.
in brand-new roads, which really irritates me.
Believe me, it irritates drivers too, especially if it's a brand-new road.
Yes.
If there's no other questions, we could use a motion to, it's not really releasing the remaining funds, but it's releasing $252,500 in funding from the Capital Reserve Fund.
For drainage improvements.
Moved by Lon, seconded by Nancy.
Sure.
It's the road infrastructure, Infrastructure Capital Reserve Fund, that this money will be coming.
Right.
Yes, I believe I took the name off the line item instead of the overall, sorry.
So, okay. So the motion was to release $252,500 from the Road Infrastructure Capital Reserve Fund to fund drainage projects as presented by Dawn Trumala at tonight's meeting.
That's correct.
And
was
authorize the
well
town
said.
manager or designee for any expenditures necessary, to sign any expenditures necessary. Anyway,
Well, that's exactly what I said.
I'm good at copying what Lon says. If there's no other comments, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 7-0-0. Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you.
I love the way you go first. Very succinct.
Okay,
Thank you, Dan.
that's, thanks, Dawn. Which brings us to the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021 funds discussion submitted by the town manager, Paul McCallie. Town council to review and discuss how to spend the $2,773,229 from the local fiscal recovery funds that the town received from the state under the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, AKA ARPA, that we just accepted the funds earlier tonight. Now we need to talk about how do we spend them by 2026?
Yes. So in looking at the needs of the community and looking at shovel-ready projects that we do have in the community, and knowing that one of the major components of the wastewater treatment plant was the screenings building, that due to the escalation of costs, kind of was removed from the project because some of our equipment was more essential, that was 50 years old. So it took a higher priority, replacing the equipment. One of the suggestions would be to use some of that $2.7 million to do the screenings building. And I have a presentation on the screenings building that we can go over if you would like, to discuss what actually will be done with the screenings program, building, and why that's necessary in the wastewater. The other thing, like Tom said, was revenue shortfalls. Currently, we do not have a revenue shortfall. However, with the shortage of chips, with the shortage of car inventory, I've been seeing less new cars pull into the parking lot because they're not out there. People, even though the interest rates are low and they want to trade in and buy new cars, it's a very low inventory. Case in point, I was up last weekend at Ira Toyota in Manchester, just seeing what they had on the lot. And I think they had three Camry LEs. I didn't see one Avalon. I saw one Tundra and one Tacoma. I saw a lot of used cars, but I didn't see any new cars on the lot. So they're having trouble getting their inventory in. So by lowering that inventory that's there, we all know about the interest rates and where they're sitting right now. And that could be potential use of these funds going forward. I'm not saying we need it right now, but going forward, that could be a potential use where we could look at, as Tom said, over the next 3 years, it could affect the, what we have for revenues. And as they relate to COVID, and really, right now, it's the car inventory and people buying new cars. That's really where the inventory is. I don't know, anybody who drives 101 over there by the Volvo dealership, you go through their lot, and the other day I was coming through, and my wife said, "Oh my, they have no cars on the lot. Where's all the cars?" And I'm like, "They're out right now. They're not hiding them. They're out. What they have is they're out." So that's, like I said, potential for some revenue looking forward. And then the last thing is stormwater drainage projects going forward. I was thinking, as Don gets further along in the MS4, maybe we could use some of this money for those type of projects as well. But the biggest one is the screenings building, and that's a little over $2.3 million. So it would take up most of this money that we did receive. The contractor right now is holding their cost on that building for us. It was kind of, well, we're coming in on the 5th. You got to tell me if you're going to give me, if we're going to sign the contract. And I'm like, no, you can wait. And if you want the job, hold your price, and we'll let you know by the 19th. And they were okay with that. But that's why I'm coming before you with it. Like I said, I do have a presentation that I'll be more than happy to share with you right now on that screening building.
We've seen that presentation multiple times. Does anybody want to see that?
So if you don't need it,
If you feel like we need to see that, then let's do it, but
all right.
thank you,
Well, we
Paul
have new
and
people that
Sarita.
need it.
Huh?
The new people.
I mean, if you want to see it,
Andy,
then,
I can give you it. I do have a copy of it, please. Please, I killed some trees.
I've seen this, I've sat in the back row.
As you know, prior to my taking town managership, Eileen came in front of you when she discussed the bond. And that was one of the things, but this is definitely a project we can do it. It checks off all the boxes. It's approved. It's state approved through the SRF program already. It checks off all the boxes for reporting with the federal government. We should be good to go. It's a large enough project that it also checks off that box, where we're not, 90 different projects. When auditors come in, they need to audit us on our federal funds. That's a large enough project. They go in there, they can look at it, checks off that auditing, so the auditing costs won't be as high because they don't have to look at several different projects, but there's going to be an increased cost associated with audit to do a federal fundus audit as well. So that's what I come before you tonight. So, like I said, if the actual amount is $2,327,764. So, not that Sarita knows that off the top of her head or anything. So it is, once again, for the people at home, it's $2,327,764.
64 or 54?
64.
I thought you said.
So that'll leave us roughly
I was off by 10.
about $445,000 left over that we don't have to decide 100% at this moment how to spend it. We can look at it because we do have until '24 to spend it. So we can look at where we are with the revenues, where we are with other items that we can spend the money on, those five items that are here.
So how does this money get pocketed? It doesn't go into the general fund, it stays in a fund by itself, or?
There will be separate accounting for it. It will be put in on the operating budget, appropriation side, but there will be a separate account with all the expenditures and all the revenues. So they will have an offsetting revenue account, an offsetting appropriation account, and that's how we'll track the cost and the money. We're supposed to be getting the first installment by next Friday, if not tomorrow. So we should be getting the $1.3 million in real soon, and we have to set that aside for tracking purposes and making sure, when the audits come in from the federal government. So.
Barbara?
I totally agree. But also, in reading this, I saw two other possible needs that we might want to consider as well. One is adding to the budget for social services, because I think Pat has had some increased business, and has she been giving out a lot of aid to folks in need? That I'm not aware of, what the circumstances are right there, but I figure
We can.
after a year of all of this, I'm sure, there may be some folks who are really in trouble. So I think that needs to be researched as well. Also, we have brand-new businesses in town that opened up in the first quarter of last year. And the only way you were able to get any of the stimulus money was, as a business, you had to be able to show 1 year's worth of receipts. So because they had to determine what your loss was. So if you just opened up in March and boom, we got COVID in April, you have no history. So there are like 2 or 3 businesses in town, maybe more that I don't know about, that got absolutely no stimulus funds during the year. And for several of them, things are a little better, but it's still very tight. And those two are some of the approved uses for this money.
They are. I can tell you right now that in discussing with Pat, the moratorium's coming up. So, but they are working because there's been money given out for those purposes. But the applications are taking about 6 weeks. So there is money at the state level to help out in those instances as well. So it's not just the town that gets a lot of this money. The state got a lot of the money too to help out at those agencies as well. The governor is putting together a task force on homelessness, things of that sort. That is one of the reasons why I'm saying, we could have the $445,000 and not decide tonight with it. I know that's not a lot of money for those businesses or for some of this stuff, but looking at the needs of the community and looking at the $17 million that we're putting into the solid waste, the sewer plant right now, it was why I'm bringing it forward, is that screening buildings, because those flushable wipes, for those that weren't on the council, we did a presentation at deliberative session 3-4 years ago now, and that March 2019, and that jar is still, that disposable wipe is still not dissolved. And I go in there and I shake it up because I'm like, no, Kyle, it will dissolve. And it's still not dissolved. So I think we're gonna bronze it when we open up this screening building, if we do get the screenings building. But they do not dispose, and they are an employee hazard, they are equipment hazard. This is something that if we did have the money, we would have done, but because of the age of our pumps and some of our infrastructure being over 50 years old, it took a higher priority than having this money coming forward. And that's not to say Sarita isn't working and trying to get grants as well with the state. And if we do get a grant for this project with the state, that maybe some of this money would come back and we'd use that. But the state, we're looking at every avenue to get as much funds from the state to help us with the wastewater treatment plant as well.
Well, and we still had more parts of the sewer project that we were unable to fund, isn't that right?
That is correct.
I mean, beyond the 2.3 million, there was probably another million or two in cuts that had to be made, or?
5
million?
5 million total had to be cut out.
Total
Had to be cut out.
Okay.
I think we had 17, the big came in around 22.
Something like, yeah.
Something like that, so.
Andy?
So the contractor holding the price. And I think we talked in this body about the benefit of having a shovel-ready project for potential future grants. Are we at risk if we let the contractor's price expire and we revisit this in 6 months and say, you know, have we had the opportunity to obtain a federal grant for this? And if not, then we pursue the screening building with these funds? I mean, is there an urgency that I don't understand that we expend these funds or approve these funds for the screening building now?
Right, I'll let Sarita talk to this a little bit, but I believe the contractor is holding his price because as of July 1st, there was a increase in all his tangibles.
There are a couple of other issues as well. One is that when you build the screenings building, you have to reroute the flow on the interceptor to the screenings building and then to the main pump station. So you want to do that at this point of the project where they're mobilized to do just that, because this is the first piece that they're going to do. Then also what we've been seeing and what they continue to see is that there is a huge increase in all of the commodities prices. The steel is so expensive. Wood is expensive. And then the timeline to get things is also incredible. It's much longer than we had anticipated. So something that would have taken 3 months 2 years ago to get is now taking 6 months. So there are a lot of reasons to do it now. I guess the biggest impetus to get it done now is the escalating costs, and then we don't see an end in sight on those.
So I would only add, you know, lumber prices fell 40% in the month of June. I mean, is this with this, you know, how long is this with us? I get the sense that we're rushing into this. It's a big chunk of money, and I understand that the screening building's been on the, you know, the drawing board for quite some time, and it's a well planned out project, but part of me wonders if it wouldn't be better to just throttle back and wait 6 months and revisit it. What's the worst that could happen is the price of the screening building changes a little bit, but we may have the potential to get a federal grant and prices may change in 6 months.
The estimate that we put out there 2 years ago in the preliminary design was 1.9 million. Steel is steel, and most of the components in the building are that, and then controls are controls as well. The other piece of it is that the functionality of working right now, people are not just throwing wipes anymore down the toilet. Now they're putting Clorox wipes down the toilet. We found towels go down the toilet. So there's a lot of stuff coming to us that as it comes through the system, it creates a lot of work and it damages our equipment. We're 52 years old, not as big a deal right now, but when you have a brand new facility that you're about to spend $17 million to construct, you want to maintain that equipment and you don't want to put that equipment in harm's way. And it's a weekly exercise for us to go into the main pump station and try and get our grinder that's in there right now started up again so that we can work. That alarm comes in every single night, pretty much at 8 o'clock at night. It is the pumps that we have right now in the main pump station are 52 years old. When we have new pumps, I don't know how they're going to fare with the quantity of wipes and materials that come through them. I don't know what's going to happen with them, and I don't know how we're going to be able to manage that with the staff that we have. We're also understaffed in maintenance as well. The other thing that also happens is we're lowering the height of our sludge holding tanks by 4 feet because of health and safety issues that we had there. That's one of the worst jobs that we have at the plant. People physically go inside and they have to physically shovel out these wipes. So the screenings building will also take care of that as well. We're going to have new equipment, new diffusers in the sludge holding tanks. And again, the old equipment that was there, are we as worried about it breaking? Probably not so much, but with new equipment, really don't want to see that money that we're spending on this infrastructure to not meet its useful life, I guess.
Interestingly enough as well, I mean, we still have another 2.5 to 2.7 million in project that we weren't able to do. I
Right.
mean, if we trimmed 5 million out, we're talking about using 2.3 to get a screening building we've been talking about for quite a number of years, installed and in the program up front while they're developing that routing and things like that. So it seems to be an efficient way to construct this program. It uses funding that's available for us to do that. And there was another thing I was going to say, and I can't remember it right now. But it seems to me to be the right idea. Oh, the other idea is that this infrastructure plan that Biden keeps pushing is still coming down the road. And it's still going to be taking up all the construction folks, contractors, to try and fill those projects when they come forward. So while the price of wood and maybe steel might come back down because that was a temporary increase due to supply and demand, I think construction labor and getting contractors available is going to continue to stay up and maybe go higher in the future. So when the guy, if you ask the same company to come back and bid in 6 months, where they may save in steel, they're going to probably pay for in labor, just because they can get jobs all over the place. And so now you have to entice them to come with a little extra cash here and there, kinds of things. So that's my concern with waiting. But I understand your point. I just think that if federal grants become available, there's even more to the sewer project that we can be applying for as part of all that funding.
I mean, I definitely agree. I think it's a gamble either way. You could be going into it prematurely. If you wait, you could be in a negative position. I concur with that.
One thing I wanted to say also, as Paul mentioned this, if we get grant money, we can reimburse the ARR money, and we can use the grant money to pay for things. So I'm not an accountant.
Sort of a no-lose situation.
He is.
You're signed up for it now. You just signed up for it.
That's it. The other thing too is that the trades. I keep hearing about the trades. Plumbers, electricians, they're one of the reasons why some of the cost of this project went through the roof, because of the individuals and the companies not having enough worker bees to do everything in those industries. We had a project in town with a company that we normally use, a project here at Town Hall. The gentleman would send usually 2 to 3 guys to do the project. One gentleman spent all day doing the project. I said, "Where's the rest of your crew?" He says, "Everybody else is tied up on a job site right now that we have to get finished." And he says, "We can't get electricians, we can't get even journeymen in here to help us right now. There's nobody coming through the trades." And that's gonna be the next bump that we have with these prices, is that, talk to a local guy. Guy says, "I want $25 an hour." He says, "Are you a gas fitter?" He says, "No." "Do you want to go to school to become a gas fitter?" "Nope." "What are you bringing?" He goes, "I'm strong." And that's what he wanted from this one company. And the guy's like, "Okay, thank you, but that's out there now." So, but I see that as another problem that we're going to be seeing down the road, is that the cost to get some of these tradesmen in here is going to be more expensive to maintain.
Okay.
It's a project that we need. One way or the other, we need it.
Do you need some kind of a motion from us at this point for at least moving that project forward, or what are you looking for?
Go ahead. Nancy, you had a
Nancy,
motion.
go ahead.
I just had actually a question and a comment regarding other potential uses of the ARP funds. At the last House Bill 737 Commission meeting, which was held on June 11th, discussion around ARP funds was basically the topic. Mr. Peter Clark from Senator Shaheen's office came to explain the whole process, the ARP, the process, and how the funds would be allocated and those kinds of things. One of the commission members asked, and I don't know if these requests have been made of the town, whether ARP funds could be used to assist private well owners And the representative from Litchfield, Representative Bohm, asked about, I'm looking at my notes because I actually typed up the notes for the meeting. Representative Bohm asked if the funds can be used for filtering public water system, and he referenced our contaminated wells in Merrimack. Mr. Clark replied that he believed that they would be eligible under the Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Fund. It would be important to confirm with DES, but he also shared that regarding the private wells, that if that filtration qualifies as a use under one of the revolving funds, then it would be eligible given the town's discretion. He said that he believes if a town chooses to provide funds to address private wells and the use would meet state revolving loan funds eligibility requirements, then it's possible that it could be used for those purposes. I raise this just because this was information we received, and certainly Merrimack is, we're worried about wastewater, but we're also worried about our drinking water. And I would hate to think that we didn't also consider, and I don't know whether requests have been made from the MVD or they're in the process of being made, but I think those are things that we should also be considering for, and we're addressing the water issues on both ends, both the clean drinking water and, the wastewater problems that we have similarly as a result. So I just want to put that out there as a consideration. I don't know if that will be a potential consideration for funding down the road, but wanted to mention that was part of the topic of discussion at State Commission last month.
So MVD has had a initial call. They have not brought anything forward to me. I know there are grants out there for communities. Londonderry got a grant from the state to help residents put in filtration systems in their home. It's from what the town manager in Londonderry told me, it helps, but it isn't a lot of money. I think they were giving out $500, rebate of $500. So if you got to put a $7,500 system in, you can get a $500 rebate. Any amount helps on it, but it wasn't a, hey, we're going to pay for all your installation kind of deal.
Installation
So,
or all of it, yeah.
but they are doing that through a grant that they got through the state, that they got applied and got through the state. So, yes, there's a lot of talk out there. You're right about a lot of these things, and every day there's something new that comes up with can we do this, can we do that, can we do this? So, and like I said before, the other thing is the state gave DES and SRF some of this money as well. Yes. Yeah, so they gave this DES $51 million out of that money as well.
So it wasn't the state, I think they got a
The
federal.
federal
Federal government gave them, they just got $51 million. And I'm not quite sure how they're gonna be able to use it. Yeah, DS did. And so when Paul was talking about it, that's a pot of money I'm paying attention to right now.
Yeah, so we're looking at
to
that
see-
money.
Yeah, to see.
To clean up environmental services problems, yeah.
Right, so, but that's where we stand, so. Million, it's million, it's an M, it's M, it's M, it's an M.
I like a billion better.
That's enough.
But no, so there's money out there at the state level for those kind of projects as well. So,
Okay,
if the council so chooses, yes, I would like some sort of authority to be able to spend this money for the screenings building. Because normally, like I said, I didn't want to muddy the waters during the public hearing, because I knew the council would have this kind of discussion. Like my pun. I thought, the council would like this discussion and figure out, as a collaborative. Usually public hearings, we come in with this is what we're gonna spend the money on, this is what we got the grant for, da-da-da. So that's why we broke this out as a separate topic. So if behooves the council, I would appreciate at least a authority to move ahead with the screenings building.
Nancy?
I would agree with this screening building, but I also agree with Nancy. I think we have to be able to, if it's not immediate, I'd like to reserve that $445,000. And also actively look into this DES business. Is it something that the council can do to write to DES and say, our understanding is you receive blah, 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 and if they're under the same criteria, we'd have to do a little research.
Right.
But if in fact their research indicates that it can be utilized for safe water, then perhaps we can be a little bit more of an impetus and be able to have, if need be, show good faith by using some of that money. We're willing to do this. What are you willing to do
Nope, I understood,
for the state?
understood that, and honestly, I've had conversations with representatives. I have had conversations with people in the budget office up at the state level, and they really are still trying to wade through a lot of this stuff and all this other stuff. I know, like I said, SRF got a lot of money, and we contacted them, and they're wading through what they gotta wade through.
Yeah.
So,
But we can sort of bring it, give them a little extra attention.
yes, we will
So
definitely
there's-
check it out.
There's a lot of bureaucracy, I think, that goes with it, and there's a lot of things that they have to do to set it up so that it's usable. And then there's also with SRF, if they give you a certain, and I think you guys have experienced this before, if they give you money, you have to have matching money. So let's say in our case, we're spending 17.1 million, well, that's the match. And then we should be able to get some grant money. So the same thing would be true for MVD. If they're spending for, they already put the system for wells 4 and 5 online, but if
Right.
it's for 7 and 8, they're spending X dollars, they might be able to get matching funds.
Right.
So I don't know all those rules.
Right. So that's what I would
Okay.
say. I think we have to keep in mind what you're talking about, Nancy, but I also think there's a priority for the screening building too.
Thank you.
So holding that 445 in abeyance and taking a little time to think about it.
Okay, Nancy?
Thank you. I just wondered, do we know the date by which those funds have to be obligated?
We have until,
2024?
2024 to obligate the money, and we have until 2026 to spend it.
Thank you.
So is there a motion to accept the concept of the screening building program going forward at 2.327764 million?
I'll move that.
Moved by Nancy, seconded by Finley, to go ahead and move forward with the screening building portion of the sewer.
I do want to
upgrade.
say that I really do appreciate what you're saying too. It's a 6 to 1, half dozen of another kind of concept, and I guess I have it having this wish that the infrastructure stuff comes down the road. And we'll be happy, we'll be good on both ends.
Yeah, and so, I'm not gonna support this motion, but I just want everybody to know, I support the screening building. I would prefer to wait, but
So I appreciate that, accept that. My only thought is hearing that if the grant funding would come through in 6 months, we could just revert this money back into the ARPA fund and allow the grant funding to do that job. So we're just grabbing the contractor while we can get him with this funding, but this funding doesn't necessarily have to be the money that's spent. The only thing different, I guess, is if we went out to bid new in 6 months, would it be more or less, and we don't know that.
yeah,
Okay.
and I understand that's a gamble. I'm not excited about rushing to meet a contractor's date that he's arbitrarily holding for us, and I'm willing to wait him out. But that's just me.
Okay. So the motion is to accept, fund the sewer screening building expansion for 2.327764 million out of the ARPA funds that we've accepted, made by Nancy and seconded by Finley. If there's no other discussion, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And any abstaining? So that passes 6-1-0 with Andy Hunter in opposition.
Thank you.
We still love you, though.
Okay. Which brings us to minutes. We have minutes from the June 24th meeting to approve.
I'd like to move the minutes of June 24th, 2021 as written, and I've actually read them.
Motion by Nancy with the comment that she read them
And that's why I'm making the motion. Normally I don't.
to approve the minutes.
And I did not see any corrections. Thank you. You brought it.
Is there a
I get-
second?
You did. Okay.
Second.
Well, I didn't
Seconded
second
by
it. Well,
Barb with corrections.
Yeah, I have two. One is on page 4, line 27, where it says F.L. Merrill. I Googled that one, and on Google, he's F.L.
And I should know that. I should have caught that.
It just, it just looked weird. It just looked weird to
Crazy
me.
if you took the
Okay, on
time to
page
Google.
9, on line
That's clever.
8.
Page 9.
9, line 8. It talks about the PFAS fact sheet. It says it's created, no, it was submitted. It wasn't created by Lorraine Allen. It was submitted
She
by
was
her.
part of the creation, but yeah.
Yeah, but it wasn't her. It was Dartmouth, a team from Dartmouth. That's what I had, thank you.
So I don't feel too bad now.
And I kind of thought that maybe on page 1, line 12, the announcement shouldn't be, please join us in a moment of silence, but Chairman Koenig requested a moment of silence. Just in light of minutes, it comes across a little better.
Agreed.
Are there any other changes or additions, corrections, modifications, thoughts? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote on the minutes as corrected. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 7-0-0, which brings us to comments from the press. Not here. Comments from the public, and also not here. Comments from the council. Finley.
Thank you, Tom. I just wanted to wish Chief Duke the best in his retirement. I'm envious, and maybe one of these decades I'll be with him. But he was really wonderful gentleman, and I appreciated he and his family, and I do wish him well. The other thing is the Merrimack275th.com, Merrimack275th.com is, I believe, fully active now, and so I encourage people to take a peek at that. And it has a method of donating, so if you're so inclined, that would be wonderful too. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Seeing none, I hope everybody continues to have a wonderful summer and hopefully dries out a little bit from some of the rain we've had lately. But if there's no further action, then we'll look for
Motion to
a
adjourn.
motion to adjourn by Nancy, seconded by Barbara. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 7-0-0. Thank you and good night,
9:44
Merrimack.
PM.